Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing our summer scouting series as we take a look at one of the teams that just the national media hates to talk about, and that's the Utah Utes. Back-to-back Pac-12 championships. Kyle Whittingham doing a phenomenal job with this program. Though I know this is one of your favorite programs just because they don't get enough respect they deserve. We're excited to get into it now. Before we do again, just want to say thank you to you guys and all the support. These are the best videos to do because we get to hear all the input from the Utah fans on players that we're sleeping on, position groups to watch. So let us know in the comment section how you guys are feeling. And of course, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill's done a lot of prep on this Utah team. Dill, I'm going to let you take it away here.
Well, that's the thing is Utah, like everyone just likes to talk about USC and Oregon, essentially, at least in terms of national
flashy teams right now.
These teams are going to go win it all. They got the quarterback. They got this. They got the new coach. Kyle Whittingham's just been steadily grinding it out at Utah for forever, it feels like. And now, with the addition of Cam Rising, who I think has allowed Kyle Whittingham to take the bones of this program that he's always had, being really physical, playing really good defense. And now he's got like kind of a true star at quarterback. And you've seen now 2 straight Pac-12 titles. And again, as much as we like talk about USC and Oregon and oh, they're the favorites and whatnot, Utah's still going to be there 100%.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you talk about Kyle, like shout out Kyle Whittingham. Like, could you name 10 coaches? You're starting a program. Like, could you name 10 coaches that you'd want to hire outside? I mean, like, you have Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, but Kyle Whittingham's, I think, a bona fide top 10 head coach in the country. He's doing a phenomenal job at this team. And we have Cam Rising. Everything we've heard is that he's on track, and I really hope he can play in that Florida game week 1. But, Dill, I want to talk a little bit about, like, you got to replace a guy like Dalton Kincaid and this pass catcher group. When you take a look at it, like it was very reliant on Dalton Kincaid, but I take a look at some of the guys coming back and I'm kind of optimistic about what they have in that room.
Well, and the big thing is like because Dalton Kincaid emerged as like a true star, I feel like people forget Brant Kuthi was like the guy coming into that season. Yeah. If he doesn't get hurt, I'm not sure Dalton Kincaid gets the chance to emerge into the guy he was. And now obviously the first round draft pick and had an incredible year. But like, don't forget Brant Kuthi. He's a dog. He might put Dalton Kincaid like year together himself. Why couldn't he? He was thought to be the better player.
Yeah, I remember 12 months ago, like that's the name we were talking about both of them, but like we weren't talking about just Dalton Kincaid. Like Brant Kuthi's that guy. And yeah, even at the wide receiver position, if I did have one gripe with this Utah offense, is it the wide receivers didn't totally step up. I really do like Devon Valley, but if it wasn't Devon Valley or Dalton Kincaid, I'm getting them mixed up now, it did seem like that offense struggled to find some playmakers. I like what they did in the transfer portal. Like you bring in a guy like Micah Pittman, you talk about a perfect fit in that Utah offense. You have Devon Valley who kind of works vertically. He's that big body, 6'5" frame that can go up and press teams vertically. Micah Pittman, I think Micah Pittman's a stud. I don't think Florida State really used him as well as they could have. Cam Rising loves to work play action, work that short and intermediate range of the field. And there's not many better wide receivers across the country in terms of working those route trees than a guy like Micah Pittman who's coming back to the West. I think I love that fit.
Yeah, I'm with you. And just because they were so reliant on those 2 guys you mentioned, to add a guy like Micah Pittman who adds something, and Devon Valley is great, but Micah Pittman does add a little bit more playmaking ability that didn't really feel like it existed on Utah last year. So now you do add him into the mix, and he complements that offense so well. And I also think it allows a guy like Money Parks to kind of fit into his role a little better. Yeah. Like forcing him into that number 2 wide receiver position, I feel like that's not really where he was ever going to thrive. He feels like more of a slot type player and get him kind of some easier touches than trying to go one-on-one versus the team's like second corner, if you will. So yeah, I think it allows him to thrive a little more. I think Makai Cope has a better chance of stepping in and adding some depth into what they do. Because again, you add a guy like Micah Pittman, it changes the dynamic of that whole wide receiver room because he is a bona fide potentially number 1, if not number 2 to Devon Valley.
And then a couple like other names that like Landon King coming from Auburn. He was supposed to go to Colorado. He's kind of a matchup nightmare. 6'5", 220, kind of a split out wide tight end. I like his game a lot. And then you have Emory Simmons coming in from Indiana. Like you lose Dalton Kincaid, But you take a look at this pass catcher group in general, and I don't hate what I see from that group. And let's not forget why this Utah team, especially on the offense side of the ball, has as much success as it is, and that is the physicality of their run game and the ability to go play action off of that. Jaquindon Jackson, I don't know if there's another player on this Utah roster, and quite frankly, across the country, that I'm more excited to see get just a workload of touches than a guy like Jaquindon Jackson.
And that's the thing, when Tavion Thomas left, like, as much as I don't think he necessarily had as good of a year as kind of I thought he was going to have last year, he still has that style of running that Utah needs, and that ready to bang and crack teams and wear them out. And again, I love what Micah Bernard provides to this offense. I think he's a much better playmaker with the ball in his hands and in operating in a little more space. But Utah still needs that guy to be able to wear teams out and run between the tackles, hard, physical kind of play that the Pac-12 teams don't want to deal with. And that's what's so big about what Jaquindon Jackson and his emergence kind of gives this Utah offense, is maybe a little higher upside than what Tavion Thompson is giving.
I think the ceiling for a dude like Jaquindon Jackson's next level. Like, right, transfers over from Texas, was like a quarterback, was again recruited as a quarterback. Like, he had some fumbling issues. I think that's why he couldn't get on the field and stay on the field as much. But you saw towards that back half of the season, like, what this guy could be, kind of being that running back one. And you mentioned Mike Bernard's awesome, but Jaquindon Jackson is going to be a workhorse for this team. And at this point, it's death taxes and Utah having a very physical offensive line that I know you noted texting me struggled maybe in a little pass protection. But if this team can stay on schedule and get 2nd and 5s, 3rd and 2s, like, that's best how you mitigate a really good pass rush. If your offensive line struggles in pass protection and you don't really get into those 3rd and longs, I think that's a really good way you can cover up for potential flaws in pass protection. But again, this Utah offensive line going to be extremely solid, and it's really hard to see this Utah offense, assuming Cam Rising comes back and is fine with the ACL. Like, I don't think this offense is going to
take a step forward, in my opinion, because again, they added some playmakers on the edge that they just didn't have, and they when you kind of are so heavily weighted to one wide receiver and a tight end, it just feels like you're not putting teams on the back foot as much as you could. And Cam Rising, he's that guy. I think you add those skill position pieces they have, I kind of expect this offense maybe take a little bit of a jump.
Utah on the defense side of the ball, like, they were a young team last year. I don't think people real like Cole Bishop young, Lander Barton young, Carney Reed young. Like, and they're getting a lot of these playmakers back. You lose a guy like Mohamed Diabate, who we were both big fans of, but like this front 7 is going to be pretty solid. And it's anchored by 2 of the better interior defensive linemen in the country, and Junior Tafua and Somé Pepe. And then you add some edge, just some edge juice, right? With Logan Fanu coming over from BYU, who can get it done on the edge. And Dill, I know you're a big Connor O'Toole guy now.
I'm expecting Connor O'Toole to have a big-time breakout year. And again, a guy who is only a true sophomore, I think can add a little bit of weight, but there's a lot of length. I thought he played with good power last year, but again, when you can just play, it just felt like he was a guy offensive lineman just struggled to handle just because of how long he was, how he's able to get his hands on offensive linemen and kind of work them over. Again, just expecting a big year from him. I thought that USC game, he really came out and was dominant against the USC offensive line that frankly is really good.
Yeah.
And again, only a true sophomore. And for who Utah recruits, there sometimes are those undeveloped guys coming out of high school. Now it's like, again, once you start to get into your junior year,
in terms of player development, no one beats
Utah guys really thrive.
They make it happen. And looking at this linebacker core, Lander Barton, it was phenomenal as a freshman, and he's probably going to be there. You always look like Utah's always had a guy, right? Clark Phillips was it last year. Devin Lloyd was it the year before. I think Lander Barton is probably Utah's guy in the sense of like being the heartbeat of that defense. But you have Carney Reed, who's also very, very good. You bring in a transfer from Stanford as well. Like, the front 7 as a whole, like, again, it's going to be awesome for Utah.
And you even look like Lander Barton didn't even really play until the end of the year last year.
Yeah.
And you saw him step on. Like, you're like, man, where was this all year? He probably should have been getting more snaps. But again, you look, Kareem Reed, only a true sophomore last year. Lander Barton, true freshman. Justin Metlock, true freshman. Like, it was so young. And again, you look, Reed and Barton coming back. you expect kind of, again, what they morphed into when they were really good and that you saw them play Oregon when they played really good defense versus maybe when they were playing at UCLA, who the inexperience showed in that game, like the misdirection and being disciplined. It obviously hurt them, but now you got them all coming back and with that experience, again, you always know Utah's going to play good defense, but they're usually not that young. I think they're going to take some big
Yeah,
steps.
so and even in the secondary, like I know you lose Clark Phillips, but I like a lot of what I mean. Cole Bishop, I think bona fide one of the better safeties in the whole entire country. I like Nate Ritchie. Again, you talk about the young guys who Utah is dynamite with player development. If you have young guys who flash on Utah, chances are they're going to be pretty damn good when they get older. Nate Ritchie's another guy like Miles Battle coming over from Ole Miss, super talented cornerback. And I mean, like Zemiah Vaughn, like it's the secondary, you lose Clark Phillips, that hurts, and it's hard to make the argument that losing one of the best cornerbacks in the country, your secondary is going to be better. I don't know if I see it taking that much of a dip, though.
I mean, Sion Vaki, I feel like, not again, one of those other true freshmen last year who really started to
So
play
fun.
good football by the end. It's just what would make you not think these guys are just going to all get way better? Because that's just what Utah does. Their guys make improvements over the 4 years. And again, you're talking like Cole Bishop, only a true sophomore last year. Sam Baki, a true freshman. Like these guys, I don't know what would make anyone think they're not just going to kind of show up there and be really dynamic players for this Utah team.
Yeah, you talk about Utah winning the Pac-12 championship, potentially pushing for a college football playoff appearance. The last picture or the last piece of the puzzle is the schedule picture. Last piece of the puzzle is the schedule. It's hard. Like there's just no other way around it. You play all the big dogs in the Pac-12. You start with Florida again. If Cam Rising is healthy for that Florida game, it's really hard for me to see the Florida Gators come to Utah and winning that football game. I know you lost it last year, but I think most of us agree you watched that game. Utah probably wins that game 8 times out of 10. You go on the road to Baylor, which I still think if Utah's as good as we think and Cam Rising's healthy, like they can win that game, Weaver State. But then you get into just a gauntlet. UCLA could be solid. On the road at Oregon State, no joke. On the road at USC, Oregon, Washington. I mean, you play all the big dogs, and you go on the road at Washington and USC. I don't think there's a game on the schedule where I'm like Utah doesn't have a chance to lose, but there's so many games that are just going to be Bears.
Yeah, and realistically, given the like rigor of the schedule, I don't necessarily see like an undefeated year.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, they're gonna be in every game. I can't remember a game honestly in my life that they haven't been in the past couple of years at least. So again, they're still right up there with anyone in the Pac-12. Like to run the schedule will certainly be difficult, but I almost feel like that's where Utah wants it to be because they want to be able to
They
like
love it. Yeah. They
they
love
want
the
to
big
be able
game.
to stick it to the big dogs or not the big dogs. Let's put it in quotes because like Utah is the big dog right now. So they want to be able to like take the USCs out. They want to be able to take Oregon's out. That's where they thrive. So I don't even know. This might almost work out well for Kyle Whittingham.
It's a gamer team. Like when the lights are bright, this Utah team wins football
They got
games.
the ultimate gamer in Cam
And then
Rising. So
and
it's
another
just
is just like the quarterback play is so good in the Pac-12. Like Cam Rising, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Jaden Delore to Arizona is a stud. I think DJU potentially at Oregon State, Dante Moore UCLA. Like the Pac-12, like we've talked about it when we're doing our Pac-12 previews. It's loaded. It's going to be a blast to watch, and this Utah team is certainly going to be in the thick of things when you're talking about potential Pac-12 champions. And we'll close it at that. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas as usual. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate all the support you guys have shown the boys, and we'll talk to y'all later.